Hello everyone. In this video lesson I am going to present the Chapter 3, Elizabethan Drama from an outline of English literature in native sound. Chapter 4 Elizabethan Drama. Elizabethan Drama 1558 to 1603 1. Thomas Kyd The Spanish Tragedy 2. Christopher Marlowe Tamburlaine the Great Dew of Malta Dr. Faustus Edward II 3. William Shakespeare Richard II Richard III King Henry IV Henry V Henry VI Midsummer Night's Dream As You Like It The Merchant of Venice Twelfth Night Romeo and Juliet Julius Caesar Coriolanus Hamlet King Lear Macbeth Othello Cymbeline The Winter's Tale The Tempest Much Ado About Nothing Julius Caesar Antony and Cleopatra 4. Benjamin Jonson Every Man in His Humour Volpone the Fox Sejanus the Alchemist Every Man Out of His Humour Epico Na 5. John Webster The White Devil The Duchess of Malfi 6. Nicholas Udall Ralph Royster Doyster 7. Lily Campaspe Endymion 8. Thomas Norton and Thomas Sackville Gore Badhak 9. Beaumont and John Fletcher The Night of the Burning Pestle The Maids Tragedy. The chief literary glory of the great Elizabethan age was its drama, but the drama started before this age. Those are not very good plays, though comedies plays are good enough. Nicholas Udall wrote Ralph Royster Doyster 1553 for his students to act. It is in rough verse and contains the sort of humour that may be found among country people. His comedy play was Gammer Gurton's Needle 1556 in rough verse. It is about the loss and the finding of a needle with which Gammer Gurton mends clothes. Lilly's prose comedy Campaspe and his allegorical play Endymion are an improvement on this. They were performed by boy actors for fun in front of Queen Elizabeth. Thomas Norton and Thomas Sackville wrote Gore Badhak 1564 in blank verse. It is very dull, and is about King Gore Badhak of England and his family. Thomas Kyd wrote The Spanish Tragedy 1592, which is tragedy of blood and popular at that time. John Webster wrote two plays, The White Devil 1611 and The Duchess of Malfi 1614, both frightening. He is not afraid of showing almost unbearable suffering, lots of violence, revenge, murder, wrongdoing, and so on. Francis Beaumont and John Fletcher together wrote The Night of the Burning Pestle 1607, a comedy drama, and The Maids Tragedy 1611, a tragedy. Christopher Marlowe Christopher Marlowe is the first great dramatist of the Elizabethan period. He wrote some dominant tragedies, which are counted among the great works of English stage. He showed originality both in choice of subject matter and the use of blank verse. His powerful blank verse lines strengthen the drama, and the developments of character heighten the sense of tragedy. Marlowe was killed in a quarrel at a Thames side inn before he was 30 years of age. If he had lived longer, he would almost certainly have written other marvelous plays. Marlowe's first tragic play, Tamburlaine the Great 1587, is written in blank verse with colourful images of power and violence. The play brought a new kind of life to the English theatre. It is in two parts. The first part deals with the rise to power, and second part is about his passion to conquer the entire world. Tamburlaine is a shepherd and a robber. The play presents his mad ambition for political power and his rise to it. The kings who are defeated by his armies are ill-treated. The ruler of the Turkey is taken from place to place in a cage like a wild animal. Other kings have to pull Tamburlaine's carriage. When they get tired, they are hanged. His life is violent in other ways. Though the play is filled with terrible cruelty and violent language and action, Marlowe's blank verse lines are usually powerful and effective. The Dew of Malta, 1589, is about a rich Jew refuses to pay taxes to the governor of Malta, so his property is taken from him, and in revenge he begins a life of violence. He helps the Turks when they attack Malta, and so they make him governor. But he decides to kill all the Turkish officers. Unluckily, an enemy makes his secret known and he himself is killed. The language of the play is not always violent and forceful. The sound and rhythm are sometimes very fine. Marlowe's Dr. Faustus, 1588, is based on the well-known story of man Faustus, who sold his soul to the devil to have power and riches in his life. Faustus is mad for intellectual power. He agrees to give his soul to the devil Mephistopheles in return for 24 years of splendid life. During these years the devil must serve him and give him what he wants. Finally, when Faustus has to face death, he is filled with fear, and the end of the play is very tragic. One of the things that Faustus orders the devil to do for him is to bring back from the dead the beautiful Helen to Troy, the cause of the Trojan War. Edward II, 1593, is most likely Marlowe's best play, deals with English history. It is equivalent to Shakespeare's best historical plays. It deals with English history, and the story is about a young king who is destroyed by his own weakness. Certainly, Marlowe's writing set an example for other dramatists in the great Elizabethan age. It is possible that he helped Shakespeare with the writing of parts of Henry VI and other early plays. William Shakespeare. Shakespeare is the greatest dramatist of English literature, though we know very little about his life. He was born and educated at Stratford-on-Avon, married Anne Hathaway, and later went to London. There he worked in a theatre, and he began his work as a dramatist by improving the work of other writers. He started his career as a play actor and then moved to playwriting. His plays are vivid, real and heart-touching. At the beginning, Shakespeare wrote historical plays by improving the works of other writers. He then gradually discovered his powers and mastered his art. Some of his historical plays are Richard II, Richard III, King Henry IV, Henry V and Henry VI. In Richard III, smooth blank verse has been used. Shakespeare also wrote a good number of comedies. They are generally better than his historical plays. Among his famous comedies are Midsummer, Night's Dream, As You Like It, The Merchant of Venice, and Twelfth Night. With his growing power and matured skill, Shakespeare wrote his tragedies. Romeo and Juliet is his first tragedy, which presents a tragic love affair. He wrote 3 Roman tragedies, namely Julius Caesar, Coriolanus. His other 4 great tragedies are Hamlet, King Lear, Macbeth, and Othello. Shakespeare's immense power and full maturity are reflected in his last group of plays, which are called the Romances. They are Cymbeline, The Winter's Tale, and The Tempest. Romeo and Juliet, 1594-5. Romeo and Juliet is the first great tragedy written by Shakespeare. The tragedy story of this drama is very popular all over the world. The deaths of Romeo and Juliet are necessary as their families are enemies, and death is the only way out of their hopeless situation. The tragedy is deeply sad. A Midsummer Night's Dream, 1595-6. The drama shows Shakespeare's growing power in comedy. The different stories of this light-hearted play are mixed together with great skill. The feelings of the lovers are never allowed to tire the audience. Something really funny always interrupts them in time. But there is true sympathy in the treatment of characters, and a great deal of beauty in made descriptive lines. It's one of the popular and widely accepted dramas of Shakespeare. The Merchant of Venice 1596–7. The drama is a comedy based, though it treats its antagonist very cruelly and gets lots of sympathy than the protagonist. Antonio is a merchant and borrows money from Shylock to help his friend Bassanio. Bassanio wants to marry the rich and beautiful Portia. Shylock hates Antonio very much and tells him if he is unable to pay the loan in time, then he has to pay £1 his flesh. Antonio couldn't pay in right time, then the dispute goes to the court. Portia appears as a judge and requests him to forget such nonsense demand, but he refuses. At last Portia agrees to provide him the flesh of Antonio, but not one drop of blood according to the agreement. As Shylock cannot take the flesh without spilling some blood, thus Antonio is saved. As You Like It 1599. It is another great comedy play of Shakespeare. It is about a story of a good duke, a nobleman of high rank. He lives in the Forest of Arden because his evil brother has driven him out of his country. Love affairs play an important part in the play. The interest is increased when the girl Rosalind dresses herself as a man. The pastoral setting gives us some beautiful descriptions. Much Ado About Nothing 1598–9. Much Ado About Nothing is a well-balanced comedy by William Shakespeare. This is the time that Shakespeare was approaching the middle of his career. Benedick and Beatrice are tricked into confessing their love for each other. Claudio is tricked into rejecting Hero, an erroneous belief that she has been unfaithful. Beatrice and Benedick, encouraged by their friends, and finally they publicly confess their love for each other. Twelfth Night 1600. Twelfth Night is a romantic comedy by William Shakespeare. The play is widely accepted the perfect English comedy. The play centers on the twins Viola and Sebastian, who are separated in a shipwreck. She has lost contact with her twin brother Sebastian, whom she believes to be drowned, and with the help of a captain, she disguises herself as a young man under the name Cesario and enters the service of Duke Orsino. Duke Orsino is in love with Olivia. Duke Orsino then uses Cesario as an intermediary to profess his passionate love before Olivia. But Olivia falls in love with Cesario. In the meantime, Viola has fallen in love with Duke Orsino, creating a love triangle. Viola loves Duke Orsino loves Olivia, and Olivia loves Viola disguised as Cesario. King Henry IV 1997–8. The historic play is in two parts. Shakespeare introduced the fat knight Sir John Falstaff in the play very well, whom the audience love very much, though Falstaff is not a model of knighthood. The young Prince Henry wastes his time drinking and joking with Falstaff. When Henry becomes king, Falstaff expects to be given a position of honor by his old companion, but Henry didn't notice him and neglect totally. Henry V 1599. Henry V is a history play by William Shakespeare, believed to have been written around 1599. It tells the story of King Henry V of England, focusing on events immediately before and after the Battle of Agincourt 1415, during the 100 Years' War. The play is the final part of a tetralogy, preceded by Richard II, Henry IV Part 1, and Henry IV Part 2. In Henry V, the young prince has matured. He embarks on an expedition to France and, his army badly outnumbered, defeats the French at Agincourt. The play is filled with the love of country and the spirit of war. Julius Caesar 1599. The Tragedy of Julius Caesar is a history play written by William Shakespeare. It is one of several plays written by Shakespeare based on true events from Roman history. The play set in Rome in 44 BC, which depicts the moral dilemma of Brutus as he joins a conspiracy led by Cassius to murder Julius Caesar to prevent him from becoming dictator of Rome. The play focuses on Brutus' struggle between the conflicting demands of honor, patriotism, and friendship. The play ends with an honor to Brutus' death by Antony. Antony and Cleopatra, 1606–7. Antony and Cleopatra is a tragedy by William Shakespeare. It is about Antony's love for the Egyptian queen. When Antony hears that Cleopatra is dead, then he wishes to die in the arms of Cleopatra, but she is not dead. At last she takes her own life by allowing a snake to bite her. The major antagonist is Octavius Caesar, one of Antony's fellow triumvirs, relative and the first emperor of the Roman Empire. Octavius spread rumor of the death of Cleopatra. He is the cause of the death of both protagonists. Coriolanus, 1607. Coriolanus is a tragedy by William Shakespeare. The play is based on the life of the legendary Roman leader Caius Marcius Coriolanus. Coriolanus is the name given to a Roman general after his military success against various uprisings challenging the government of Rome. Following this success, Coriolanus becomes active in politics and seeks political leadership. His temperament is unsuited for popular leadership and he is quickly overthrown. Whereupon he aligns himself to set matters straight according to his own will. The alliances he builds along the way result in his ultimate downfall. Hamlet, 1600–1. Hamlet is a tragedy written by William Shakespeare sometime. It is Shakespeare's longest play with 30,557 words. It is set in Denmark. The play portrays Prince Hamlet and his revenge against his uncle, Claudius, who has murdered Hamlet's father in order to seize his throne and marry Hamlet's mother. Hamlet hesitates to kill his uncle after his father's ghost tells him about misdeed of his uncle. He checked proof though he hesitates again to kill his uncle. Hamlet is considered among the most powerful and influential works of world literature and one of Shakespeare's most popular works during his lifetime. Hamlet keeps our sympathy, but the end is certain and unavoidable. King Lear, 1606. King Lear is a tragedy written by William Shakespeare. It tells the story of a king who gives his power and land to two of his three daughters. After they declare their love for him in an extremely flattering and obedient manner, his third daughter gets nothing, because she will not flatter him as her sisters had done. When he feels he has been treated with disrespect by the two daughters who now have his wealth and power, he becomes furious to the point of madness. He eventually becomes tenderly reconciled to his third daughter just before tragedy strikes her and then the king. The tragedy is noted for its probing observations on the nature of human suffering and kinship. George Bernard Shaw also wrote, "No man will ever write a better tragedy than Lear." Macbeth, 1605–6. Macbeth is a tragedy by William Shakespeare. It is about political ambition on those who seek power for its own sake. Macbeth is Shakespeare's shortest tragedy. A brave Scottish general named Macbeth receives a prediction from three witches that one day he will become King of Scotland. His wife encourages him and Macbeth murders King Duncan and takes the Scottish throne for himself. He kills all his enemies to protect himself. He soon becomes a tyrannical ruler. Duncan's relatives bring armies and take Macbeth's life. Othello, 1604–5. Othello is a tragedy drama by William Shakespeare. It is based on the story of a Moorish captain. The story revolves around its two central characters, Othello, a Moorish general, and an evil old soldier, Iago. Othello has a beautiful wife, Desdemona. Iago tells the false story of his wife and an officer to him. Then Othello believes the story and, being furious on his wife's cheating, he kills his wife, and at last Othello commits suicide. Benjamin Jonson, one of the great dramatists of Elizabethan age, is Ben Jonson, who follows the path of Shakespeare. His plays are based on the theory of the four humours. The ancient writers influenced much of the Jonson's ideas. He believed in three unities that are the unities of place, time and action. Every Man in His Humour, 1598, is his famous play. The play belongs to the subgenre of the humorous comedy, in which each major character is dominated by an overriding humor. Jonson's main failure as a dramatist lies in the fact that a humor for him was a special foolishness, or the chief strong feeling in a man, like anxiety and jealousy. Therefore his characters are walking humors and not really human. Jonson wrote about 20 plays alone and others with other playwrights. Of his comedies, Volpone the Fox, Every Man Out of His Humour, Epicoene and The Silent Woman are famous. His tragedy, Sejanus, was played at the Globe Theatre. He was also one of the best producers of masques, which are dramatic entertainments with dancing and music and given more importance than the story and characters. He was very proud and rude man, criticize every writers except Shakespeare. Thank you for joining with me in this video lesson, and subscribe my channel to get my upcoming video lesson continuously. Keep suggesting us. See you soon.